Hello everyone, welcome to Learn Overflow. In this video, we'll be discussing the topic of what is a dynamically typed language. We'll know what is dynamic typed language. We'll try to differentiate this with other kind of languages or other kind of typed languages, and we'll at last try to figure out why we call Python as a dynamically typed language, why we say that Python is a dynamically typed language. We'll try to understand the whole thing, so stay tuned and watch till the end to know completely why it is a dynamically typed language. So let's begin. Before we actually start, we should know a bit more about typing. Okay, so when you are again and again saying dynamically typed language, so we are just referring to this typing. So something is typed, right? So typing basically refers to the type checking of programming languages, the type checking. So you might think this is confusing. What is this type checking is in a programming language, and what is this, right? So let's deep dive and see what this is. So typing is basically two types. It's basically of two different variants are available of typing, and the first one is strongly typed language. So what is a strongly typed, and obviously the second one is the weakly typed languages. Now when you say a strongly typed languages or a weakly typed languages, we can explain this with a small example. Let's take an example of string 1 plus 2. So in languages like Python, what would that happen if we just try to add uh, 2 with integer 2 with a string 1? In that case, what would happen in Python? It would give you a type error. Okay, so for strongly typed languages like Python, this would result in a type error. But like they are trying to say that these languages don't allow the implicit conversion of data types. Like they don't convert data types implicitly. You need to explicitly say the compiler or the interpreter to uh, convert the data type. Okay, on the other hand, if you just look at the weakly typed, so if this piece of code was executed in a weakly typed language, then what would have happened? Then this would simply result in 12 as a string. All right. So as a simply weakly typed language, you can say it as a JavaScript. So in JavaScript, if you just implement this piece of code, this would result in 12. Anyone knowing JavaScript would definitely know that. Moving on, so that's the basic difference between a strongly type and a weakly type. So this is the what typing refers to. All right. Next, type checking. That type checking, we referred that the typing actually means the type checking of programming languages. That's we discussed a bit before. So this type checking can be done at two stages. Okay. So this type checking can be done at two stages. So the number one we say at the static stage, and the number two we say as a dynamic stage. So this static stage is basically statically typed language, and the second one is dynamically typed language, that is a dynamic stage. Uh, in most simplest language, what are this? In the most simplest language, you can say that a static stage is when the data types are checked before execution, and in a dynamic stage is when a data types are checked at the during the execution. All right. So a dynamically typed languages are those in which variables must necessarily be defined before they are used. This implies that the dynamic type language do not require explicit declaration of variables before they are used. All right. So if you just want to read more about this statically typed languages or dynamically typed languages, I'm just sharing you a few details from Stack Overflow, some answers in Stack Overflow. Below is the source to the exact link from this Stack Overflow. You can just read, pause it here and read more about these two languages. Obviously, here you can see as an example that statically typed languages are C, C++, Java, and Rust, Go, Scala. And dynamically typed languages are Python, Ruby, uh, Perl, PHP. All right, just move on to our basic question: why Python is dynamically typed language? So we say that Python is dynamically typed language. So to answer this, you should say that Python, being an interpreted language, executes each statement line by line. We know that Python has an interpreter. It don't run on a compiler. It has an interpreter and it interprets or executes each statement line by line. Thus, every statement type checking is done on that line, that is during the execution, right? Hence we can say that Python is a dynamically typed language. Just in simple terms, if you just it's better to take a small example and explain. So just take an example like we don't do this kind of statement, like we beforehand don't define a variable, right? We don't write int a and then we say a is 20 or a is 25, something like that, is equal to 20, 20, 25, like that. In Python, we don't do this kind of thing. In C, C++, or in Java, we definitely do this kind of thing. In Python, how we do that? We directly say, write a variable and assign a value to it, right? This is what we do in Python. But in so that's the reason it's Python is a dynamically typed language. So we can say that Python, in Python, the variables must necessarily be defined before they are used, right? So in Python, we actually define the variable and that's necessary. We need to mention that a has a value and we write that a is something. We write a value a equal to 20 is or some integer value. It's necessary in Python to define its value before we use it, right? That's the thing that makes Python a dynamically typed language. So I hope the question is clear to you, and whenever you are asked this question and you can answer this properly. So thank you guys for watching this video. Hope to see you soon in my next video. But make sure you just like this video, comment down your thoughts and share it with your friends who are having an interview this time. Thank you everyone.